off?
Well, we thought after our last call last week, Megan and Zach and I were talking and thought maybe we'd share kind of what our training platforms looked like when we were running our teams and kind of start from there, and then other people can jump in and share what they're doing. Does that sound good? So this was a huge thing for me when I was on my team because I needed to be leveraged and training was taking way too much of my time, especially with agents. So I actually developed a training program through Trainual, and it was self-driven and brought the agents through their 30, 60, 90 self-driven. We still did the one-on-one meetings each week, and they had assignments they had to bring back. So that's how I inspected what I expected. So for instance, on their buyer presentation, their responsibility, we gave them a sample. Their responsibility was to learn it using whatever team members they needed to use. And the team knew that they were supposed to help these new agents. And then they had to record themselves. And they had to graduate from that to be able to go out and do, say, a buyer presentation. So that's just a small example of like that, what's the word I'm looking for, Zach? That,
well, how you potentially could set up your training, right? Just one of the software or leverage pieces you could use.
That was the piece, right? And that was the piece of accountability that they had. So we put hours and hours into this training program, and yet it leveraged me so much because once it was all put together, we could bring on new agents and they either excelled or they failed out. I mean, if they couldn't do it, then they were gone. So it made the decision easy for us.
Yeah, it gave them the opportunity to own the role,
mm-hmm.
right? Which we talk about so much. And if we're doing all of the, and we should be doing the training and engaging like Paula is saying, and yet if we're not sending measurable benchmarks for them to take action on, then are we truly setting them up to own the role? Or are we developing a relationship, right, where 3 months down the road, we're answering the same questions on phone call over and over and over again?
And the nice thing about the program I had set up is, let's say they learned something but didn't use it for 3 months and now they've forgotten it. They could always go back in and relook that up.
Great question, Paula, for you. So I don't want to mess this up. Is it, Lauren, did you only do this type of training for agents or did you do it for other positions as well?
So we set up it for every position, yet not as in depth as the agent training, because the agents are the ones that are pretty consistent. You know, you're not going to go through a TC over and over and over, or a listing manager over and over and over, or I hope you wouldn't. So we did have training programs set up for those positions, and yet they weren't as in depth as the agent training was.
What other questions do you have for Paula around here and around this specific example?
So something like the buyer presentation, how exactly did you structure that training? Because I feel like currently, like, we're asking them to sit down with our Rainmaker, which obviously is not going to be scalable. So just trying to figure out how we would put that system in place.
So I actually videoed like our top buyer's agent giving the presentation, and they were all to mimic what that buyer agent was doing. And it doesn't mean they couldn't make it their own. Like, they didn't fail if they made it their own. What we wanted was that the messaging was consistent across the board.
Hearing you go through that, and then we'll jump on another question, but I had a thought. I mean, with the power of Zoom and it being able to record, how much easier it would have been just for them to jump on. Like, I did that before too. Like, you're using the camera, right? And like trying to get the whole angle and record what they're saying. And if they both would have just hopped on Zoom, you would have had like a great recording service to download.
Yep,
So
so
the next
true.
question comes from Sarah. Did your training change when it was a brand new agent versus an experienced agent?
Yeah, and we specialized in brand new agents. So yeah, it would have changed if we had experienced agents. It's just we specialized in training those brand new agents and getting them up and going.
Any other questions around the program? And Paula, did you want to type that into the chat? It was Trainual.
Trainual.
My cheeks are going to get in the way. I won't be able to say it. I'll let you type it in. There you go. Perfect. So I have a question. You had mentioned, Paula, that you had agents record themselves. What did you use to do that? What did that look like inside your training?
It was however they wanted to do it. They just had to record themselves, which most people just use their phones and recorded themselves on their phones. And then they would just email it over to me.
Got it. So another tip, FYI, not only did we have Zoom that you could record, if you go to freeconferencecall.com, you can get a free number that will record short tidbits, right? So then you can download it. So you could have everyone call into a number and have the download. It won't hold it for very long if you're using the free version, yet you could get it.
I'm pretty sure you can also record Google Meets, which is also free if you've got a Google account.
Yeah.
Yes, that is very true. As long as it's not from your personal, unless they change that about Google Meet, but it used to be able to only record.
I have a question. I know you said everything was on Trainual. As for like the self-learning videos, did you use anything else for training purposes to like house everything in one spot?
No, everything was housed through Trainual.
Okay.
Yeah, we even had a library that had like special scenarios, like 1031 exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if you needed to learn what a 1031 exchange was, you could go into the library in Trainual and, you know, watch the video on that or read on it, however we had it set up.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's tons of platforms. That's just the one we chose to use, yet I know there's tons of platforms out there for you guys to use.
Yeah, I just heard of Google Sites, which is really easy to navigate. Somebody else I was talking to that coaches with the same coach I do was kind of set up her entire manual in like sections on there. So I started doing that, and I started having everybody record based on the department, record different training videos. It's a lot of freaking work. So I admire you for getting that all in there. But it's going to be great when it's all done.
Yes, it was amazing when it was all done. And part of it is I leveraged the training I was already doing. So if I was already training an agent, I just took that training and put it in. So I wasn't doubling it. I just took what I was doing at the moment.
Oh, do you remember what was the cost for that software, subscriptions and all of that?
Yeah, when I was using it, it was $100 a month. So I don't know if it's gone up at all, but.
That's not too bad at all.
Not for what it did. I was way more expensive than the software was.
And I apologize, my laptop is overheating here. I'm trying to get it cooled down, so I may freeze up again. So a couple things too, based off of that. Anyone use Google Classroom or looked into that?
My kid uses Google Classroom. We haven't used it for our business though.
So I wish Brooke was on this call. I would have her up, but with your KW address, right? Because you got to have a corporate account. So if your team is paying for an account, a Google account, a corporate one, you get Google Classroom, and you can set up training through that as well. And that's another great resource you could look into that's included with it. Like myself, I believe I use the same platform Jennifer did, which was create the intranet through Google. Is that what you were talking about, Jennifer?
Yeah, through the Google Sites. Yeah,
Yep,
pretty
Google
much.
Sites.
Like I broke it down into different departments, and then I have like a general agent dashboard, and then like a training video section. It wasn't my idea though. I copied somebody else, but it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, you can put videos on there. What's nice about it too is because it's a Google site, you can put spreadsheets. So then I would have spreadsheets linked to videos on there. So I utilize that as well. I will tell you though, it has its problems, its issues, right? So some of the benefits were that it was Google and it would be easy to navigate, plus it formatted for the phone, like it was terrific. The downside was that if you were not on the right email account, it would block you. So when you're thinking about doing it, just be careful of the permissions and how, like, where's everything located at? Because based on agents' needs, if they weren't logged in right, it wouldn't give them access. And then it created more work because I'd get emails sometimes being like, I can't log in, or it won't let me go based off of that.
Yeah, I've discovered that too, is that if I'm linking it to a Google Drive doc or a Google sheet or something like that, you're right, the permissions have to be, because I've already discovered that as we're going.
Now, with that said, the nice thing is though, and I'm sure Jennifer's heard this too, if you do offboard somebody, right, it's very easy to revoke that access. Once you cancel their email through your corporate, they're off and they don't have access to it anymore.
So what are some platforms other people are using?
Currently, most of our stuff is on Google Sites as well. I know I've heard a lot of people use Trello. However, we don't have experience with that.
We use Trello for other things that actually would be a really great idea to use to track training, store it, link to it, all of that.
Alyssa and Sabrina, I know you both use Trello. Would either one of you want to share like how well it works, how it works?
I can share mine if you want to see it.
Okay. Just gave you access.
Okay, let me get this pulled up. I have 1,000 windows open right now. Let's see. I'll pull up my operations board. So this is still a work in progress, but it actually works really well for us. We've started using Loom videos. Excuse me. We started using Loom videos to, really dig into these cards and show what we're doing for better training purposes. And it seems to be working out really well. We have a different board for our sales team as well. But we have it broken down into 30, 60, 90. And then the courses that we want anyone being onboarded to go over.
Can you open one of the cards to show us like what a card might look like?
Yeah. Some of them have more information on them, but we'll just go in here and put the description and anything extra that we really want them to focus on. And then we'll do an attachment with a video with a link or what have you, so that they can do their own learning while they're also shadowing agents or TCs. So,
And then how do you know when they've completed it?
yeah, that's a great question. So we have everyone go through and they tag it as green if they completed it. And then we have them tag it as red if they have questions or if they need help. And then we have them go over any red tagged items at their 411 on Fridays.
So does everyone operate off the same board, or do you like copy these and assign it to people?
We copy these and assign them, but it's always changing. I think there's a section over here with extras on here. So a lot of the stuff that we've gone over in these classes, or just anything that I can apply to these other cards over here, I'll add it and update it and roll it out to the next person onboarded.
Any questions for Alyssa? So there's quite a bit on this card.
Mhm. Yeah, some sections we have a lot more red tags than others. But it's a really good, starting point for our 411s. So it kind of all helps everyone.
And so do they get to work at their own pace, or do you guys set an expectation of, we want this done by this week, or?
They can kind of go at their own pace within the 1 to 30 days. And then it's the accountability partner. It's their responsibility to make sure that they are allotting enough time and time blocking in the appropriate way to get all of these things done.
What challenges are you finding with this so far? Anything that you've learned that you've changed, or best practices that people should consider when starting this?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to come onto a team that already had a system in place, right? So we're just kind of refining all of the things that are on here. But I found that when I got to take this piece over, there were a lot of cards that could have been consolidated with other cards. We were trying to overteach or, create this training program in hopes of that person not needing to ask any questions. But there are always going to be questions, right? So just kind of consolidating and hitting the highlights is my focus right now.
We use Trello. Well, we still use it, not for training or onboarding anymore, but I did also love the ease of it. It was super simple to hyperlink different spreadsheets and things to it. So I love that part of it. Thought that was really easy. I still use it for different stages of hiring when we're interviewing and recruiting and hiring. I find it super useful for that kind of thing, and also for project management within the team, because you can assign different people to different things. My team needed something a little bit more visual, and that's why we switched to Google Sites. But my experience with Trello has been really good too, though.
So can we dive in there a little bit, Jennifer? Just so the visual aspect of a Google Sites is great. How did you implement the training that you had on Google Sites? What did that look like?
So it's in the works. It needs a lot of stuff. But basically kind of what Paula said is I'm doing more videos and going to implement a little bit more self-driven, just for scalability purposes. We found that all of our training, everything has been hand-holding, taking them through, and we just needed to leverage ourselves a little bit better as we're growing so quickly. So I pretty much took what we had on Trello and the training that I had in folders on Google Drive, and kind of just broke that out and dug a little bit deeper into certain systems. Like for example, our inside sales team is 9 months this month, so it's relatively kind of new, but a lot of things we found were like in people's heads and not on paper. So bringing on people and training people up, it was just taking a lot of manpower, as opposed to housing. Like we've taken a lot of trainings and recorded them, so housing all of them and kind of organizing it. So like week 1, you're going to watch, you know, these 2 videos on whatever they're learning about, and then reporting to our director of sales and reviewing those. So a little bit more independence in training. And that's why I think this is going to be good and leverage the people who were training. It does need a lot of work though. It's overwhelming, but we'll get there. We're kind of doing it, you know, as Paula was saying, like as we're training people, we're working on it. I'm also leveraging some of our more senior agents in helping create those videos for training purposes. So it's coming along.
No, that's awesome. The challenge I had was always, I had that site, but then I had my spreadsheets because I like doing I liked lining up my training with the 30, 60, 90. Right. So like you're completing weeks 1 through 4, then you're completing weeks 5 through 8. Like I lined mine up with there, but it was making sure that flow made sense in the Google site. Right. And that is one of the things I like about this Trello board we're talking, or like Paula pulling up the training software, is that it kind of creates that flow. Yet I wonder, Paul, for your example, you still had to store the training documents for reference somewhere, right? Or could people just go back into that program and look it up?
Yeah, they were all stored within the program. So Lauren just asked if someone could share the Google site to see what it looks like. Does anybody have one that they could share?
Mine's not done, but I can share it.
I have some stuff on it. It's not finished either.
I could share mine if you won't judge it.
We won't judge it.
Okay, hold on. Okay. So this is kind of the homepage where I kind of wanted to be all about culture. So our core values, our mission and vision. I'm going to, it's a work in process. I kind of have like placeholders there for things I want to do. This is like creating a legacy, where we started and where we are now. And then just a video about our team that I linked to the bottom. Then I have general office information. So links to all of our pages for people to review when they first come in. Our office information, our market centers information, policies and standards, our meeting schedule, and it's linked up to the Zoom meeting links, and different training opportunities. And then I have like our meet the team page with everyone's positions on it. And then a link to everyone's contact information. And then these are we have a vendor list, but it's not the greatest. Like I wanted to make it a little bit more visual where people could click on things. So these are like home inspectors, home insurance, all that stuff listed here. Book and podcast lists. I'm working on this just because we're really big into education on our team. And when somebody new comes in, we're kind of like scrambling to remind us of what books they need to read. So I figured I'd just keep adding to our list. And then I'm going to start adding all of our training videos here. They'll probably be categorized, you know, like any buyer listing presentations in one section. This is my agent dashboard. These are kind of like general things that all of our agents need to know. And sometimes what happens is when somebody starts, they'll learn it from the start and then not necessarily remember it or know where to go or can't find it on Google Drive. So I kind of wanted these things in one central place. So, all of our CDT script book and lead gen reporting and all that stuff on this page. And then the training modules is not done, but it's kind of something that kind of what Paula was saying in regards to having more videos and going through like, okay, day one, this is what your day one looks like. These are the videos that you need to watch. And then you need to submit your recording or whatever. That's kind of what those training modules are going to look like. Hopefully, that's what I envision it to look like.
That's awesome, Jennifer.
It's a mess.
Similar to that?
I
Elizabeth?
like it a lot too. It's amazing.
Yes.
Is yours pretty similar to that?
Kind of. Ours has a lot more just videos. Ours is mostly just videos, like links to all of our videos categorized.
Why don't you share yours just so that people can see a different way of doing it on the same platform?
Okay. So this is ours. This is just the homepage, and I actually have here our numbers. So again, we try to keep our numbers in front of our agents all the time. So the very first thing, as well as a link to it. And then, let's see here. For appointments, we've got all of the documents they might need in terms of, packets and documents and forms. We do a lot with Google Forms too. So that for buyers, sellers. And then I have command videos that I've put together.
I like that idea. That's a good idea.
And then contract resources. So when I said that, you can click on, or eventually it'll be so you can click on these and it'll take you farther down. So just all of our DocuSign videos as we've been moving over. And then so far it's just a tab for training, which is, you can see is still way in progress. Like I don't even have anything in for day one. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That does give us a different visual of a different way of doing it.
Can I ask a question to the brain trust here? And maybe this has only ever just been me, but do you guys put together these great training plans? You give them their 30, 60, 90, you like spin them around, pat them on the butt and tell them like, go for it. And then you start to wonder as you have conversations later on, like, did they actually do those training videos or programs? Because the things they're saying or the questions they're asking are very suspect as to whether or not they could have possibly completed that training. I'm seeing some people shaking, so I'm feeling less alone. So what are some tactics or like techniques you guys have come up with to make sure in shorter increments that the actual training is taking place when it's self-serve like that?
I'm going to jump in here real quick because this was a key thing for me. Trainual set up that they can take quizzes. They'll have to pass things. It shows you what they've looked at. So it was a really easy software for me to hold them accountable to what they said they were doing. Now that doesn't mean they didn't get 3 months down the road and forget something they'd learned. But again, like I said, they could go back and relearn it.
Yeah, I've never heard of Trainual, but I like it for that. I'm definitely going to look into it to see if I can kind of incorporate maybe both things. But I do think that you need some sort of accountability and something that, you give them and then they submit back to you instead of you keep on asking them, because that's a lot of time and not really scalable. So I like the Trainual part of that.
I'm really interested too in looking into Google Classroom and seeing what options there are that way. Because I know in Google Classroom, at least for my son, like he'll complete an assignment and then he'll actually like turn it in. So there'll be a way to actually track what they've done theoretically. So.
For those of you actually doing stuff like Paula mentioned, like quizzing or running it through a program where you can actually see that it was accessed, reviewed, watched, etc. Did implementing that, did you see a difference?
I didn't do it.
Implemented that versus having nothing? No one is having a difference, or no one has implemented it. I'm very unclear. This was a bad question. I own that.
I'm guessing nobody's implemented it.
That would be my guess.
I think it's a great question, Megan. It's just, I think from our perspective, I'm on the stage one, how to put together the training, you know, share some ideas before and all of that, but let's get it done together, and then we're gonna see the accountability for sure. We need to have something solid. But I love it. The question is great.
Love that, Julian. So yeah, I mean, I love Paula's example. I had a similar experience when we started implementing quizzes. It changed things really fast because people knew they had to actually take the training piece. So was just curious how many people had found success and what platforms you were using. I never personally used Trainual. That's a great tip, Paula. That sounds very automated.
It changed my life.
There is one thing I used before in my previous position. It's called observation evaluation. So it's like a scoreboard card with a quick checklist of things that you need to observe as a behavior or trends or, you know, speech or, you know, whatever these are. And it's a very quick to take. And usually it's done by supervisor. In our situation, probably that will be director of operations. So, and you kind of like, you know, you don't let them know when you're doing it. You just go randomly in the lead generation room with your card and start checking, then walk away. And then when you have your coaching or meeting or, you know, like a training with them, you go back to them and giving them a feedback. So, you know, hey, I've seen you doing this and this, like what you can do to improve that. Oh, but I saw it, you know, on the video. Oh, really? What video did you watch? And that's kind of how we catch them. But in my previous experience shows that this observation evaluation with some tests along the way was really like productive way of accountability. But I don't know, I'm still like figuring out things how to implement that in this industry in a productive manner, if that makes sense.
Hey, Paula, I have a question. When you had somebody that didn't score well on the quiz, what happened?
I never really had that problem because as soon as they would jump in to take it, they would realize that they had to actually watch it or go through it. So they could stop what they were doing and go backwards.
So it was enough accountability just knowing there was a quiz to
Yes. Yeah.
have. Gotcha.
So I have a problem kind of along these lines, but it's like 30, 60 days after. So we front load them with all of the information and they pass the quizzes, whatever. But then 60 days from now, they finally get something under contract and now they've forgotten everything about the under contract process. Do you make them go back and redo that part? Do you have them do it at a later time? How do you deal with some of that stuff that's not going to happen up front?
Yeah, Cameron, I think that's the biggest thing about an agent's 30, 60, 90 is they learn so much up front and you don't retain anything you're not actually using. It's a huge issue. And I don't know that I have a great answer for that. They could always go back and retake it. And maybe that in the moment, we don't have time to go back and retake it, that they actually need some hand holding to get through it, right? Because the offer's due in 20 minutes. So it's kind of case by case, yet they could always go back and revisit it. So even if we got that offer submitted, my suggestion would be go back and look at this module.
I always guys just
Cameron, one thing that I would say is that if you are the one that becomes their resource to answer them in the moment, then you're always their resource to answer them in the moment. And so set yourself up for a little success going forward to not be their main source of information, because that's exhausting, right?
Yeah, I've been better with that, but my TC hates it. Like, oh, what are you doing under contract? Go talk to Heather. She's the one that does it. So now she hates me, but I'm okay with it.
Another thing that I've started doing is when someone asks me a question, I will actually make a short video on it, like a 30-second video, because then I can save it. And the next time someone asks the same question, I can then share the video with them that I've already got.
For your question, Cameron, I experimented a lot with that question, like where do you put that, like where do you put the training for when? And like Paula said, I'm not sure there's like a perfect formula. I did tend to, I like front loaded the 30 days with more of the top of the funnel stuff. And I ultimately ended up not teaching even contracts until the second set. So like you didn't even learn contracts in the first 30 days. That had its own set of challenges, but that was my preferred set of challenges, if you will. I figured if you like had license, you got licensed, like you knew enough about it to like be okay until the second set of days. But I will caveat that because all teams are different. So we get on these masterminds and we hear what somebody says and we're like, I'm going to do that without like really interrogating the context. So I will just add that in our situation, if you were like a new agent, we staged you in. So for your first 30 days, you couldn't put anything under contract anyway. So we didn't bother to teach contracts because if you got an actual appointment, you gave it to a senior agent that you then shadowed on that appointment. So, but yeah, I think it's something you got to play around with to see when is the least amount of retraining needed, but still in enough time that you didn't like drop the ball and they have no training. And that's probably a little different answer for every single team on this call.
The other thing too, Cameron, is I did make their learning experiential. So for instance, they had to write an offer as part of their training. It was a mock offer, but they had to write one. So they didn't just learn how to do it. They actually had to write one and turn it in.
Like that.
Yeah, we did that too. And then put it in command, like the full shebang. Like you had to take a fake person. Ours was like 123 Whale Street, Mr. Moby Dick. You had to take like this fake person with this fake house and do the whole thing, like write the offer and etc. So that is another great point, Paula.
Another thing that we would add on just to just another layer there is to present the offer as the agent. We were the buyer. They had to come and either present the listing paperwork or present the purchase agreement as though they were sitting down next to us filling it out. But an added piece was that they had to sit across the table and do it upside down, because that's how you're going to sit at a table and go over the paperwork with your client at that point, right? And so it was just a little added piece to make sure that they really knew those documents forward and backward.
And was that you as the DOO or more of a director of sales type?
A director of sales. Yeah, I wasn't.
Okay.
Depends on your team size, but for a team your size, Cameron, that would be the DOS for sure.
That's what I was thinking.
You could do this too, by the way, guys, for your TCs or your LCs, right? Like you can give them a fake whatever. So if you know they can't like sit with you that day, you could always give them a fake contract to process as homework. Like it's, a written one that they're going to go process and what steps would they take and et cetera, et cetera.
I know so often when we're training like a TC, we're jumping into the middle of a transaction, right? Because nothing times out perfectly that their start day is the beginning of a transaction. So we're jumping into the middle and they're learning the process kind of from the middle out. So giving them that fake one to run through works really well because then they have to run through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to inspect, right, what you're expecting, so that helps. And I view training as picking their 20%, right? So I wouldn't have them, for me personally, I never had them like test everything. It was like the key 20% categories for me. So I looked at it more as I needed to introduce them to the topics and I needed them to provide the resources to know where to go when they needed it. so they weren't coming to me. Right. And that's what led me, and like what Ryan said, that's what led me to the Google site. Yet I will say it wasn't automated as much, which I really like the automation conversation we're having, right? Like, how do we do this so they own it higher? But I would take a good look at your training program and be like, one, does it introduce them to the 20% I need them to learn? And two, is it organized in a way to where they can go get it when they need it so they can implement it? And do you know it well enough where it's at? So if they do come to you, you're like, go here and you can look it up.
I heard at Masterminds once that if an agent or somebody comes to you, you know, and asking you a question, you say, okay, what are your 3 options or 3 answers? And we'll discuss those 3. And that has helped so much. And that's where it's like, hey, I've got a question on this contract, or what do I do in this scenario? It's like, cool, what are our 3 options? And then we'll discuss those 3. But then after a few months of doing that, they will learn to kind of figure it out, but then also run it by you. So that has actually saved a lot of time, but sticking with that. And sometimes they'll hate my answer, like, okay, what are our 3 options? But it really does help save time in the long run. So that was a good pointer I heard from, I think, a mastermind somewhere. So.
And that's not only for agents, that's for our staff too.
Yeah, Hannah, so good. Like, thank you for bringing that to our mastermind, because what's the real point of training someone? Like, what's the outcome that you're looking for when you train someone? Anyone? Like,
yeah, like back when I usually work in the office, not today, but usually back in the office, and, you know, like new agents will come in, and doing that also not just people within our team, but like with the market center and other new agents and other admin, you know, it kind of helps them like dig for an answer, not just rely on you.
Yeah, girl, what are you like? You're teaching them how to think. That's the whole point of a training program, really, right? Should be to teach them how to think so that they can go get the information when they need it. It's not really, the point of the training program is not really to teach them how to like click here and point there. It's really to teach them how to think so that they can get what they want when they need it, period. So I love that you brought that up, because, hey, great, like bring me 3 solutions and we'll discuss those 3 is a great way to teach somebody how to think. Like, super good. I think that's a Tony DeSello move. He used to say he'd write it on, if his door was closed, he'd say, right, if you're here, like write down your question with 3 potential solutions and I'll schedule an appointment. And then A, most people wouldn't actually take the time to do that, but B, by the time they thought of 3 problems, they'd like already solved it. So they were off and going. Like, so good, teaching people how to think. I hope y'all wrote that one down. That one's like going to change your life. I just already know it.
And if you set that expectation up front with everybody ahead of time, then they know they don't come to you without those solutions.
I think one of the biggest key pieces in there is, and there's a book called Setting the Table that is a fantastic resource, and it talks about constantly providing constant gentle pressure and redirecting people back. So whether your resources are on a Google site, that's a playbook, whether it's telling them to bring you 3 possible solutions, it's being consistent every time they come back and redirecting them to go to the playbook, go to the playbook. Bring me 3 solutions, bring me 3 solutions. That will then, like you mentioned, they'll just come to you with the 3 solutions without you even having to remind them. And it becomes a habit at that point. That's when you know that you've succeeded.
Yeah, I love all of that. And there is another side of the story. We need to make sure that we actually provide these resources for them so we can keep them accountable for it. We can't expect keeping them accountable if we don't have the resources and say, oh, you go figure it out. And then there is nothing to figure out. You know, you can expect from them to know what they don't know. You need to have like the resource, you need to have the, you know, kind of like, you need to offer them something. You need to offer the solution in a very understandable manner. So when you set your expectation, and you said, okay, bring me the, like 2 solutions or 2 or whatever, they'll come up with me with the solution. There is supposed to be already set up a path that they need to figure out how to walk through. Not just to be like, oh, like bring me this, 3 solutions or something, and then you're just waiting and see what they're gonna come up with, and they're coming up with all kinds of things, and you keep wasting time. But that way things are backtracking, and going back and forth, it doesn't move forward. So my goal is, when I'm building my training program, to be as simplified as possible in the most efficient manner. So my goal is everyone who enter, so our ultimate goal is for them to be successful, not just to be tested constantly, but just to be successful, to learn how to do the job or the profession that they're signing up for, to be very great. We don't want them to leave. We want them to stay. We want them to feel like inspired. We want them to be a great part of the team. So we need to offer that for them. And if they're a good fit, they'll prove it by finding these solutions already by the system that we create. At least this is my kind of like a motivation behind creating a system for training and implementing it.
So we have about 9 minutes left. Did anybody have a question that they haven't asked yet around training?
Cameron, I know you got like 500 more questions, man.
I know, but I'm feeling like even just answers I'm getting as I think through, I'm getting a lot of ideas now. Even like one of the thoughts was, we hire either they seem to be like brand new agents, or they've been doing it for 5 or 6 years and failed building a team. And like those 2 agents are so different. And we have our 1 30 60 90 to solve everything. And so just even thinking through that, it's like we probably need to take the time and have resources for both of them. Maybe a different plan, like skip the easy things. Like you don't need to learn how to write an offer. And we try to lean a lot on the market center for some of the training with the new agents. But I like even looking at some of the examples that you guys gave on your sites and how many resources you have there to really be the go-to and just direct people somewhere and things like that for the new one. So I feel like I'm getting a lot of clarity here.
Good.
I am kind of, thinking along the same lines as Cameron. How do you differentiate for those 2 levels of experience? And my first thought is, okay, if an agent claims to have so many years of experience, great. That doesn't mean they don't do the training. Maybe they skip the videos and they do the demonstration portion. How do you know that they're going to live up to your expectations if you just accept the fact that they say, yeah, I know how to do that? So if it was write up a fake offer, then go ahead and do that. And let's see if you're going to live up to our team's standards on it. And if not, then okay, you need to go back and do the training portion.
Great feedback, Emily.
I feel that in many ways, like that should be like predetermined. Like you need to first assess the situation, assess the, kind of like the experience of the person you're hiring. And then I feel the training should be very flexible. For instance, in my previous experience, because I can speak with that solely, it's like that. If you're coming in and you're a team member and you have experience in hospitality business and you have like X amount of experience, you're not going to go through all of the entire program for new employees. You're going to skip that much, and it's going to customize for you. You're going to put these different things, like different subjects and topics. You're going to put them on the list as a manager for you, and I'm going to give you this list, so you're going to go through that and you get trained on it. So, and Paula knows about my SOPs a lot because I'm in love with that. So all you have to do is put this. So I'm kind of imagining like here 30, 60, 90 in the way of being SOP. So you have to figure out the format and how that's going to live and happen. But you come in with a new agent, you put their 30, 60, 90 based off, it's a new agent. Here we go, enjoy. Then you have another one, medium experience. Oh, they need to know this and this and this and that. You pull these links all together, put them on 30, 60, 90, boom, here we go. Then you have very experienced person. So you're going to set different type of goals for them. But for all the procedures or admin or whatever, for all the procedures for every single step or whatever you're going to be doing there, you need to have this SOP process file. So when it comes down to the actual training card for them, or 30, 60, 90, or however you want to call it, like you just pull from everywhere, put it together, and just give it to them. So it's like one big assignment that they need to follow, but everything is already done for you on the side. That's kind of like the method we used before, and it's been extremely efficient. Like you don't waste the time. You already know everything inside out. You put it together and give it to them, and they just fine. But I know how we can make it. I know we can make it here as well. We just have to study more and learn all of the different processes and positions to be able to synthesize things and make it efficient.
I thought of a question. You're right, Megan, I do have lots. How are you guys training right now, kind of for the culture fit? You know, I feel like we try to hire for the culture, but then there is some training. You know, we try to go above and beyond and showing the under contract, like every single process, do that a little bit different. And I feel so much of that is learned just by like watching others and being in person. And we're having less and less of that right now. Like the more I sit with people, the more I feel like they fit our culture and kind of learn how to interact with the team. But how are you solving for that right now? Videos can't be the answer. Is anyone doing something well?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think you can put culture into videos. However, if your culture is going above and beyond, when you're training them to go above and beyond. So it just kind of, as they get trained, it gets ingrained in them. Okay.
And then if you've hired someone that typically wants to do that, I guess
yeah,
that kind of falls in.
Yeah, and then there's like, I think each team probably like has their own lingo. Like, I don't know if anyone here has read Fred Factor. It's a really quick, easy read. Anyways, we read it as a team a year or two ago, and he talks about like being a Fred means going above and beyond. And so like our team, you know, will say if anyone has any Freds. So, you know, basically applauding someone for going above and beyond. So I feel like some of that lingo just, I don't know whether I should put together like a sheet that's like, here are all of the Kellerisms, here are all of our team's lingo, or if it should just be something that you learn like as you're around it and you hear it. Like, I don't know. Because would people understand it as much if they just read it, or do they have to live it?
Great questions.
Everybody got their questions answered today? Okay, so next week is family reunion, and then next Thursday we'll have our family reunion download. And then the week after that will be Miracle Morning review. Is everybody reading it? Or is Zach, Megan, and I going to show up and tell you guys all what we read?
I know Zach is gonna come out of the gate strong on this one. This is like Zach's manual.
There's a few playbooks that I have that I run, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Well, whether you read it or not, come, because we will be talking about like actionable strategies, and Zach could probably like do a one-man reenactment of the entire book. So we'll see where that goes. It's gonna be fun.
Which, interestingly enough, I did not like the first half of the book, which is just my personality. And it's one of my favorite books because of the back half.
Interesting.
See, and I like the front half better than the back half.
Now you'll have to read it to figure out which one is which and see
What
who's.
are we talking about? It'll be good. No, we'll be bringing up a couple resources. Believe this, you will believe, coming from me, right? We'll dive into that book and talk about the MREA, and we'll bring up the one thing, which all reference what we're going to be discussing.
No doubt. All right, gang. See you next week. Happy family reunion.